Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to News Dose. And just a few days ago, it was revealed that PlayStation might have signed a contract for more of their games to go multi-platform. Now, of course, this is still a controversial strategy when you talk to people online. This is a brand that built its reputation on the backbone of exclusivity. So the idea of some of their games going multi-platform certainly has struck a chord with certain gamers. Well, today we actually got even more information that really showcases why Sony is gradually going into that direction, and I think some of the results might actually surprise you. Not only because Xbox gamers, yes, do actually buy games, but also the fact that PlayStation isn't nearly as sizable as you would think when it comes to their very own game. So stick around and we'll get into all of that, and also another PlayStation handheld that has fans excited, including myself. First, though, I do want to thank my supporters on Patreon and on YouTube memberships. Thank you just so much for what you do, and you will receive this video through early access. Let's go and get right into things, though, starting off with the Analogue 3D. The Nintendo 64 FPGA console finally launched a few months back, but not necessarily without its issues. Now, I think overall its launch was really good, and I do believe it's the best way to play Nintendo 64 games on a modern TV. However, with any new console launch, usually there's updates that follows that, kind of fixes problems that pops up early on. Well, Analogue just pushed out the Analogue 3D 1.2.0 update, which not only fixes issues like audio problems and Space Station Silicon Valley, which is a game that I actually talked to them about. I was a bit disappointed when it was one of the only games that didn't work at launch, but that's now been fixed, and I confirmed that today when I updated my 3D. So, great news there, but this update also includes new OS features like display time per each game, as well as other things. Now, I will include some images on screen so you can see everything that was updated, because it is a lot, and I'm happy that it actually released fairly quick. I was a little worried that it was going to take them a long time, but Analogue seems to be on top of things, and that's great to see. Now, we also got some news for No Rest for the Wicked. This game has been selling crazy good this past week, and there's really three different reasons why. One is word of mouth. Fan reception has been really good for this game and has climbed all the way back to an 86% approval rate on Steam, which is pretty incredible for a game that launched in much shakier conditions. Then also, they just dropped its co-op mode, which again has been getting rave reviews online. And then to top things off, Moon Studios made the brilliant decision to discount it by 40%. It's currently $24 and will remain at that price until February 5th. But that's kind of the thing, because the CEO, Thomas Mahler, announced that this is a temporary discount that won't happen again in the future. And when it eventually launches, it'll actually raise in price to $60. Now, you can call that a FOMO tactic because, it kind of is, but at the end of the day, it's a fantastic price for a quality game that will eventually be $60, which has always been the case. So if you're interested in No Rest for the Wicked, then you might want to go pick it up now at possibly its best price until long into the future. Oh, and Nintendo responded to the Walmart Switch Online rumor that popped up earlier in the week, and this is a really weird situation. So if you were unaware, a few days back, Walmart dropped a Switch Online ad on their website, and you can see here, it looks fairly normal until you start to realize that there's two games included that don't belong, being Metroid Prime 2 and Pikmin 2. So this led fans to the idea that these two games will be announced relatively soon. That would make sense, but, well, Nintendo claims that's not true at all. In a response issued to IGN, they said, "We recently provided a retailer with an image of Nintendo GameCube, Nintendo Classic titles that incorrectly included games that are not planned for release at this time. This image has been removed, and we apologize for any confusion." And okay, maybe it was simply just an error, that's fine, but the thing is that I have a hard time believing that these two games were added by a simple accident. And what I mean by that is that I still believe that this basically confirms that yes, they have plans to launch Metroid Prime 2 and Pikmin 2 into Switch Online at some point. Now, maybe it's not necessarily imminent like the original leak seemed to have indicated, but I do expect that these two games will launch into Switch Online at some point down the road. Now, some fans might be excited about that, but I also know there's some disappointment as well, just because there is a lot of hope that Metroid Prime 2 will get a full-on remaster similar to the first game. I mean, it honestly needs it, but we'll see what happens. The only thing I can say about that, though, is that just because something launches into Switch Online, that doesn't necessarily rule out the idea that a remaster could still happen. I mean, we have to kind of see what Nintendo will do with games like Zelda Wind Waker HD as one such example, but if anything, it might make it a little bit less likely. All right, now let's just go and talk about PlayStation and their multi-platform strategy. Now again, I understand that not everybody necessarily likes the idea of the console makers going multi-platform, but at the end of the day, it is happening. And now it's just kind of about to what scale. You know, when it comes to Xbox, they're basically a third-party company that just so happens to have a console and their own ecosystem. PlayStation, though, their plans are still a little bit more mysterious. I don't expect their shift to be as rapid as Xbox, but I think by this point, we do have a loose idea of what they want to do for the immediate future. And that's to launch live service games as fully multi-platform games when they can, and especially on PC, and then to launch some of their back catalog games on more platforms, including consoles. Now, personally, I'm actually very excited about that specific idea because depending on how they handle it, that strategy could produce some really cool remasters like Ratchet & Clank, Sly Cooper, Jak and Daxter, the Gravity Rush games, There's Little Big Planet, Eco, the original God of War trilogy, and so many more that they could remaster and launch onto platforms like PC, the Nintendo Switch 2, and even on Xbox if they decide to. Now, as I said the other day, I think PlayStation fans should be happy about that, not nervous, because not only are you going to get remasters out of this type of strategy, but again, it could also revive a lot of these franchises that we haven't seen in a very long time. So again, I think there's a lot of potential with that specific strategy depending on how they approach it. However, as for live service games, of course, this includes brand new games that will launch day one on PC and possibly on Xbox as well. And let me just put it this way. Do you remember back in 2024 when Xbox came out and they said, well, we're going to launch these 4 games on PlayStation, but that's it. No more are coming. Well, the thing is that they had success with that strategy. Games like Grounded, Sea of Thieves, and the eventual Forza Horizon 5 have been big-time success stories for Xbox on the PlayStation 5. And as a business, Microsoft looked at those results and they said, well, that 4-game plan, throw that idea out the window and release more games on PlayStation because we like money. Well, I bring that up because Sony has come to a similar realization when it comes to their live service games, and Helldivers 2 was that wake-up call for them because check this out. So Alinea Analytics just dropped some new information online, and you can see it here. They estimated that Helldivers 2 has sold 20 million units, but if you look closely, you'll start to notice that PlayStation isn't even the lead platform. In fact, Steam more than doubles the units that have been sold on a PlayStation 5. According to their information, Helldivers 2 has sold 13.1 million units on Steam, 5.6 million on the PlayStation 5, and then 1.6 million units on Xbox, despite it launching much later than the other 2 platforms. Now, this tells us a few different things. One is just how important PC is for PlayStation. I mean, I've said time and time again on this channel, Sony launched Helldivers 2 with what seemed like very low expectations for them. It really wasn't until word of mouth on Steam picked up that Helldivers 2 popped off the way that it did. And then by that point, Sony had to kind of, put things like PSN on PC because they're like, hey, this game's a big success. So, really, I don't believe that this game would have been the big success story that it became if it only launched on the PS5. I mean, it might have still sold a couple million copies, but it certainly wouldn't have gotten to 20 million like it is now. But Steam really carried this game. Now, the other thing that this information tells us, though, is that yes, there are a lot of Xbox gamers that don't play on PlayStation, and yes, they do buy games despite the online narrative that they don't. So kind of similar to the Xbox only 4-game plan for PlayStation, I think this kind of tells us why Sony is going to continue to push for more multi-platform games. This is why they went out and hired somebody to lead their multi-platform strategy. It's been a success for them, and that's really all these businesses care for. So absolutely do expect more multi-platform games from PlayStation going forward, especially when it comes to live service games and their back catalog titles. All right, now one more thing before we go, though, because we're now hearing about yet another PlayStation handheld planned for 2026. Now, unfortunately, this is not the rumored PlayStation handheld that will play games natively. We're still going to have to wait a little bit longer for that one, but instead, it's an OLED PlayStation Portal. Now, this comes from Kepler L2, which has a fairly decent reputation. I'm not going to necessarily call him the gold standard, but I do know for a fact that Sony has been very happy with the PlayStation Portal. It's been a big success for them, and it's sold several million units. Now, I own one myself, and I'm extremely happy with it. I've been playing it just here recently. I mean, it's much better than what you would expect for a remote play console. It's definitely the best remote play experience that I've ever had, if anything else. But if I had one complaint about it, it would be the display. I mean, it's fine for what it is, but at the same time, it's certainly not an OLED experience, and it also doesn't have things like HDR. So it is something that they could improve, and just given how successful it's been for them, I mean, I think an OLED model definitely makes a lot of sense. I think my only thing about this, though, is that it's a bit annoying that they didn't do that for the PlayStation Anniversary Edition. It kind of feels like that would have been the perfect time to do it, but I don't know. Either way, I might buy yet another one because it really is a great device. I mean, don't knock it if you haven't tried it. It really is that good if you have a good internet setup. Let me know, though, are you interested in an OLED PlayStation Portal if they do one this year? Anyways, though, that's going to be it for this episode, but until next time, make sure to subscribe, ring that bell, and peace out.